Okay, so once again, we're in the middle of Perek Yud Aleph. He's going through a lot of different mitzvos, very big ones typically, related to the meat of Nikios, which is about real perfection and wanting to be careful of every aspect of a mitzvah. So we're discussing the concept of the idea of sheker, falsehood and lying. And he discussed the first two madregas in terms of a negative madrega. The first one was someone who lies for their profession. Use the analogy, not that obviously everyone in this field is bad and a liar, but the most classic examples are like a used car salesman, a lawyer. Obviously, there are many from amazing, honest lawyers, and hopefully there probably are some honest car salesmen. I don't think I know any used from car salesmen, but from used car salesmen, but I'm sure there probably are somewhere. But either way, that's the worst level, is someone who lies for their profession, continuously lies about everything. The next one is not someone who lies for their profession, but they always take the opportunity to lie. You can never see or get from them what's true and what's false, because they take the opportunities to lie kind of when it comes to them. And he continues now, V'yesh od, where we are, V'yesh od achirim shachalayim kal mecholei harishonim. There's other levels that is lighter than the other two levels. V'hem osam she'enam kavuim kol kach b'sheker. They're not embedded in falsehood. They're not looking for every opportunity to lie and say something false. It's just that they don't care to distance themselves from lying. So you think about, I would say probably the average person who doesn't care about mitzvos or midos probably falls into this category. It's not like they want to always lie, but like they don't care. And if they lie here and there, okay, no big deal. And if the opportunity comes for them to say something that happens to be false, like they could get away with it, yeah, why not? I'll say, who cares? And oftentimes they might say it almost jokingly, and they're not really saying it because of some deceitful, evil way. They're just like, yes, making a joke and lying about something, right? So that stuff happens, right? I'm not sure. I'm about to give an example. I'm not sure if this falls into like the ra'ah, like of evil and bad example, or it might just be like just because like the opportunity comes your way, right? There are plenty of times and things that we go to in life where there are different prices for ages, right? So if you are maybe below 20, you get this, or certainly used to be like if you're a minor below whatever age, not 18 minor, but like if you're under 10 years old, you get this. I'll use like a parent analogy that could apply to all of us in a number of years. Or let's say you go somewhere with your kids one day and it's like below 8 years old is a discount, 50% discount. Your kid is 9. They could clearly pass for 7 or 8. You're like, oh, one adult and one child who's 7. It's not that you're going to lie. It's not that you want to lie, but it's that like, oh, here's an opportunity. Yeah, why not? I'll take it. So things like that, obviously that's terrible. That's also stealing. That's like I said, probably a little bit of a worse example, but it is an example where you don't seek it out, but the opportunity presents itself. The Amnon Chacham Hodiana. So Shlomo HaMelech, who's referred to here as the Chacham, the wise man, wisest of all men, he informs us, this idea of lying, even though you're not doing it out of malice, but this idea of lying goes totally against the Ratzon Hashem. Masha, Kosa, what it says in Mishlei Yud Gimel, Kosuk, hey, Dvar Sheker Yisna Tzadik. The words of falsehood, the words of lying, are words that a righteous man hates. He despises them. But Masha Ba'alav Hara, and the warning in Shmos Kaf Gimel Zayin says, Midvar Sheker Tirchak, that all of us are obligated to distance ourselves from words of falsehood. Iresh Lomar Misheker Tishamer. Torah doesn't say you should guard lying. You should guard yourself from lying. Ela midvar sheker tircha. Rather, run away from it. Don't just like be where it is and like, right, imagine you're at battle and someone says like you could either put up your shield and stop the enemy from harming you that way, or you could run away, right? So running away is much more powerful. It's much more of a statement. So over here, it's not just like, oh, let me put up my spiritual shield and block any falsehood from that I say, but let me run away from it. I don't want to come close to it. Laha'ir osanu ala herchek agadol dabricha rabba shetzarach lebroch mizeh. Excuse me. But we're told that we need to run away from this thing. Don't come close. Bar Nemar says in Spania Gimel Gimel, she'eris Yisrael lo yasu avla v'lo yadabru chazav v'lo yimata b'fiyam l'shon tarmis. That the Jewish people are praised, she'eris Yisrael, that they don't have a corruption in them, and that they don't speak falsehood. You can't find in them, in their words, any deceit. The Chacham Zochron Levracha Amru in the Gemara in Shabbos on Nun Hey Amud Aleph says Chosama Shel Kadosh Baruch Hu Emes. That when it comes to all the different attributes in the world, every midah there is, so what would we think represents Hashem the most? So the Gemara says that the seal of Hashem is Emes. That's what Hashem represents, Emes. And Emes is something that, just like meaning, we have a mitzvah to emulate Hashem. So the concept of Emes, which he's going to discuss now at length, he's going from lying and discussing lying to specifically discussing being honest and the benefits and our obligation to be honest. It's something that a person has to do at the best they can to try not to lie. Now, of course, and he discusses, there are exceptions to this. And there are certain cases where, for example, if your wife says, I'll just give a classic example. I mean, I was going to say, like, does the food taste good or do I look nice? But, like, an even more, like, extreme one is, like, do I look fat in this dress? The answer is never yes. You do. That's not the answer. No, you look great, honey, right? Oh, my God, the food was delicious. So we know what we have to do. And it is what we have to do, and there's no avera in that. There's probably an avera in being honest in certain cases like that. So, but overall, 99% of the time, and the interactions that we have with people, being as honest as possible is true. Just to give you an example of this, and I'm contemplating whether to be honest or not, and I'll tell you the example. This is literally what I was thinking about today. So, unfortunately, so Danny Palagon from the shul, his father was nifter on Sunday. Could be you know him, could be you don't know him. So my wife, when I found out, my wife she worked on Sunday and on Monday. Both days are like classic holidays that everyone's off. Like I was watching my son most of those days. And I didn't want, he's sitting Shiva in the 5 towns. And after those days, like I wasn't gonna, like, part of me feels bad leaving my wife watching my son for 5 hours, because it'll be like, I don't know, at least 4 hours. It'll be like an hour to an hour and a half each way of driving to the 5 towns. And they'd be there for half an hour to an hour, something like that. So let's just say 3-4 hours, whatever. Maybe I felt bad about leaving my wife watching my son for all that time. And aside from that, like my wife was working most of the day and it was just tough. So then I have these nights, right? So that was Sunday, Monday. So then he's getting up on Sunday morning. So the only opportunity is really, it's like, now we have Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, if I want to go, it has to be at night. To go at night to the 5 towns, also like crazy traffic getting there. Similar situation, I would have to like put my kids to bed, or I don't know, it would just be very rough. And then Friday, I actually teach virtually, and teaching is done at about 12:30. And like on Erev Shabbos, to drive to the 5 towns on Erev Shabbos is a big deal. Drive to and from is also a very, very big deal. So part of me, I don't think I'm going to end up going in person. I think I'm going to call, which I almost never do. But in this situation, I think I'm going to call. And when I speak to him, part of me, in terms of being honest, I should say, like, I'm sorry I didn't come in person, and then just go on. But the lying and the more classic thing to say is like, sorry, I couldn't make it in person. Sorry, that shows like, oh, like I really wanted to try, which is true. I did want to try. Like, I would have wanted to be there. If it wasn't for the cheshbon of like my wife having to watch my son, like I'd probably do it. So do I say the classic of like, oh, I really want to be there. Sorry, I couldn't. I'm like, my wife was working on today and Monday, and I'm just sorry. Or like the MS is like, could I? Yeah, I could go tomorrow night, leave at 6 o'clock, be in crazy traffic, get there at 7:30, 8 o'clock, stay for half an hour, get home at 9:30, 10 o'clock, and that's my night. I could do that, right? So I feel bad saying like I couldn't. Sorry, I couldn't come. I could. Technically, more than technically, I could. So it's one of those things where like I don't know. Like on the one hand, like I've been debating with this, and I'm not sure what I'm going to say if I end up calling and not calling in person. These things are tricky where you want to be honest and it's important. MS is so important, but like I might just honestly end up saying like, sorry, I didn't come in person. I might just say that. He might not think like, oh, because you could have easily come. I think he'll get it. But that's just something I was literally thinking about over the last few hours. So that is the seal. Part of it, part of the drive for honesty is like this is the Gemara says this is the seal of Hashem, like Hashem's midah. Let me see where we are over here. Right, so MS basically is the skill of Hashem, and that's how we define Hashem. That's what Hashem obviously loves and desires. Imagine how much the opposite of MS is an abomination. How awful it is to lie. His here Kadosh Baruch Hu al ha-emes as hara rabba. The Amar Dabru emes ish esreyehu. Hashem gives basically commands us, tells us in Zechariah Chet Zayin that you should speak emes, one person to another, you to your friends. The Amar, it says Yeshayahu Tet Zayin Hey, in reference to the throne of Mashiach. V'huchan b'chesed kisei v'yashav ala be'emes. That it stands on emes. It's one of the main midos related to what's gonna, let's say, bring Mashiach. I'm trying to think if it's bring Mashiach or what Mashiach will be doing. Yeah, the throne of Mashiach will be established by chesed and emes. V'yamar v'yomer ach ami hema banim lo yishakeru. That he praises Bnei Israel, the banim, children of Hashem, for not lying. And we see that this is dependent on that, meaning the pasuk called us banim, and the pasuk said we don't lie. So he says, must be that if you want to be called a ben, you want to be considered a son of Hashem, a child of Hashem, it means not to lie. And if you lie, you're no longer a child of Hashem. Hence, V'yomar says Zechariah Chet Gimel. The Nikra al Yerushalayim Ir Emes. The Yerushalayim is referred to as the city of Emes. The Hagdil Chashivusa. The description is in order to increase its prominence, to show how great Yerushalayim is, that here's a place where people speak Emes. Bar Amr Zafran of the Bracha and Makos Kafdal and Alf. The Dover Emes Bel Vavo. That one who speaks truth in his heart. Kegon Rav Safra B'chulei. Doesn't share the whole story. I'll give you the story in a second. So it teaches you just how far a person should go to strive for keeping emes. Story goes that Rav Safra, he was, let me see if he was buying or selling. He was selling his donkey, and there's a person who came along to buy it. And let's just say, I'll make up the number. Let's say a person says, I'll give you $500 for that donkey. And all of a sudden there's silence. Or Safra doesn't say anything. And then the person's waiting and that silence is a little awkward. And the person thinks, you know why he's silent? Because like he's contemplating whether he wants to take that deal for 500. So the person says 600 before Safra even responds. So Safra tells the guy, he says, you should know, when you made that first offer, I was in the middle of saying a bracha. and I couldn't respond. I couldn't respond to you. I don't know if he was benching or making bracha. He was saying something to Hashem, davening in some form, and he couldn't respond. And he said, but in my heart, I had in mind to take that offer. So I'm going to take the 500 offer. So even though he could have easily taken the $600 offer, that's the only thing the guy did. 500, pure silence, 600. So, okay, great. Paid an extra $100. Safar was so honest that even in his mind, he kept what he thought about. Whereas, I want you to know, I was going to take the 500. Bar Asru, that a Talmid Chacham is not able to lie except for 3 matters. The 3 matters are related to how much Torah a person knows. I'll give you a cute story about this. The idea is to be humble. That if someone knows all of Shas, and someone's like, "Oh my God, you know everything? Have you learned all of Shas?" So the person doesn't have to say, "Yeah, I did." Person knows it. Person can lie. Person's allowed to lie and say, "No, I learned a little bit of it." There's a cute story. I don't know if it's true or not true, but I heard about Rav Aaron Soloveitchik. Rav Aaron Soloveitchik had his bechina. I remember hearing it was for YU. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if he was a student at YU. But wherever he was having some bechina. And the bochein asks him, says, what should I test you on? He says, you could test me on half of Shas. So the guy says to him, he says, the bochein asks, so which half of Shas do you want to be tested on? So he responded, he said, either half, whichever half you want. I know all of Shas. So it's a cute story. But a person is allowed to lie in general when it comes to Torah. The second thing is related to matters between husband and wife, more delicate and private, intimate matters. Person doesn't have to. Sometimes I've remember hearing once, like that's why sometimes people lie with dating, more loosely tied to this. Like, okay, things related to women. Like I don't have to tell people I'm in a relationship. They ask me am I dating someone. Like, just say, like certain case, that's one. The other thing is super random. But the other one is that you could lie. Ironically, it would seem backwards. I had to literally read the line again to make sure it was right. You could lie to say that a host who you went to eat by was not good. You're allowed to say it was not good. Seems strange. Why? Because if you say, oh my God, this host was amazing, they give you tons of food, so then what? Everyone's going to want to go to that person's house, and now that person's not going to have any food. So you're allowed to lie in that regard. Those are the 3 things. Like I said, in general, like shalom bayis may fall into the general marriage one. But there's not too many things. Obviously, to not embarrass someone. Like those are the 3 primary things that are listed. Continuing, the echad min ha'amudim sha'olam omed alav huwa emes. That one of the pillars of the world is emes. Im kain mi shadover sheker kilu notel yisodo shel olam. But therefore, if the pillar of the world, something that holds up the world, is emes, and therefore someone who speaks sheker, someone who speaks falsehood and lies, is someone who's breaking down, taking off, removing a pillar, something that's holding up the world. We take off a pillar of the building, right? That could bring down the entire building. But he says the opposite is also true for the positive. Someone who speaks emes is like someone who's upholding a pillar of the world. Bar Sipru Chachamim Zefan Bracha and Sanhedrin Tet Zayin Amid Aleph Me'osa Makom Shehayu Zehirim Be'emes Shelo Haya Malach Hamaves Shel Beisham. That about that place, that there was a place, there was a town, the Gemara says, where people were extremely careful to speak emes, so much so where in the zchus of their meticulousness and the need of emes, of being honest, the Malach Hamaves was not able to touch them. They were all staying alive. No one was dying. But there was a woman, the wife of a certain Rav, who did lie. Even though there was a reason for her to lie, she lied. And because of her lie, the Malach Hamaves was able to come into the city and take people. It says a report here they even took children. And what happened? Because of what this woman did, they banished her. They found out the reason, like, wait, how's the Muhammad here? How are people dying? They found out what happened, I guess. They looked into it, investigated the matter, and they kicked her out. And then, once again, tranquility and their long life was returned. It says, I don't need to discuss this anymore because it's obvious. Logic tells us this, about how beneficial MS is and how awful lying is. Now, the next thing we'll do a little bit of this is we're going to discuss Chil Hashem. Let me just give a little bit of an introduction, which is that Chil Hashem is one of arguably the worst sin, or certainly one could argue a very, very bad sin. An argument to say that's not the worst sin is because you don't get not Chayv Misa based in. You don't get killed if someone makes a Chil Hashem. But at the same time, in Hilchos Tshuva, the Rambam says that he goes through an intense list of, let's say, the lowest rung of things how to do tshuva for something. The lowest rung is not doing the mitzvah aseh. So if, let's say, someone didn't put on tefillin today, then if a person has charata and does the steps to do tshuva, then you're forgiven on the spot. For a lo aseh, if, let's say, a person ate not kosher, so then that person has to have charata to do all the proper things, and their forgiveness is suspended until Yom Kippur. They need Yom Kippur to come to atone for it. And then the list goes on to things where you have to physically suffer and other things, and says, when it comes to Chil Hashem, even if you do tshuva, you feel terrible about it, even if Yom Kippur comes, even if you suffer, you are not forgiven for it until the day you die. Because actual death is actually a big kapara. Very intense stuff related to Chil Hashem. So he's gonna discuss. He's gonna quote the Gemara that will see that examples of Chil Hashem are not at all what you and I would have thought these examples would be. So when it comes to Chil Hashem, right, for many of us, I'm not sure exactly what Chagai has in Israel, but for those of us in America, because we're around non-Jews so much, so all of us have probably had the experience, maybe many times in life, where you're going on a trip with your school or camp, and the director, the division head, or counselor says, remember to make a Kiddush Hashem. You don't want to make a Chil Hashem. Wear your kippah and pride and be proper and respectful, right? The Chil Hashem speech. So it's very important, and that's the classic thing we think about. So what would the Chil Hashem look like in that case? About a kid, let's say being wild at an amusement park and being like running around and doing mischievous stuff. That's a Chil Hashem. That's like the classic thing we think about, right? So let's see what it says here. Learn for a few more minutes. So Anfei Chil Hashem gamkin heim rabim gedolim ki harbe tzarch adam liyos chas al kvod kono. There are many branches, a lot of different avenues related to Chil Hashem, that a person has to take care and be responsible for the cover of Hashem. Every single thing a person does, every action we do, a person has to think. It's kind of like what we learned about in Zehiras. Before you do an action, think. That was Zehiras, basically, in a nutshell. Right? So think about your actions. Be careful with what you're going to do before you do it, because Chas v'Shalom, it could result in a Chil Hashem. And the Mishnah Pirkei Avos, Perek Daled, Mishnah Daled, explains that whether you commit a Chil Hashem on purpose or by accident, you're still culpable, you're still responsible, and you're still found guilty of it in Shemayim. Now, it doesn't mean that you get the same punishment. Obviously, it's much worse to actively and with das to commit a Chil Hashem than to do it by accident. But nonetheless, a person can be punished either way. The Amr Zachar Baruch says in Yuma on Pevav Amanal, Hechi Dama Chil Hashem, What's an example of Chil Hashem? Amar Rav Kigon Ana. Now here's what I was going to say. These are not examples you or I would have thought about. What's Chil Hashem? Says the Gemara in Yoma. Oh, when he goes in, this rabbi goes in to buy meat, kosher meat, and he doesn't pay for it right away. Interesting. That's a Chil Hashem, meaning it doesn't say he doesn't pay for it. He doesn't pay right away. He's going to pay back. But that thought that has he not paying for it, that's already a Chil Hashem in this person. Rabbi Yochanan says, Kigon Ana de Misagena Arba Amos Bolator Bolatfilm. So Rabbi Yochanan says it's a Chil Hashem for me to go walk 4 Amos, Dalad Amos, without wearing tefillin and learning Torah. The Inyan Shekol Adam Lefi Madrigoso Lefi Mashahu Nechsha the Inyan. He says the lesson for this is that a Chil Hashem is when you're acting below the way you are perceived by people around you. So for me, let's say, when as a rabbi and when I'm in school, or maybe if I'm an Avat Shalom, so maybe people perceive me a certain way and people hold me to a certain standard for sure. Certainly a different standard than the average student or secular teacher in secular like history teacher in Kushner, and certainly maybe different than the average person who comes in the middle of laning in Avat Shalom, right? I'm definitely held to a different standard, and that's understandable, and I have to therefore, whether it's, the interesting thing is whether it's true or false, that's what I have to live up to. I could be much worse behind closed doors, but that's the standard that people view me in. As he says, that a person has to be careful to not do anything that's less than their stature. That's in proportion to his chashivus and his chachma. So because of this, a person has to be extra careful, to be vigilant in this, to really be as careful if what they're doing may cause a Chil Hashem. If they're not careful about this, then Shem Shamayim could be tainted. Now, it says that this is also related to the Torah itself. In general, when someone learns Torah, the more learning you do in Torah, the greater of a person you are expected to become. Meaning, when your Torah knowledge increases, your midos should increase as well. And anyone who's growing in their learning, but they're not upping their game in their midos category, you're causing a disgrace to your Torah, to the Torah itself. That's your Torah, to the Torah itself. That's a Chil Hashem in a certain sense. Because Hashem gave us the Torah, where through the Torah we are protecting ourselves. We're protecting ourselves and doing our best to be as perfect as we could be. So if someone's learning, they're supposed to be at a certain madrega and they're not, then that itself is a Chil Hashem. We're going to stop here.